Have you ever thought about all the amazing stories that just never get told? You know, the novels that are sitting in a drawer somewhere, the manuscripts collecting dust. For a long, long time, the publishing world was like a fortress. But then, technology came along and basically handed the keys over to the writers themselves. This is the story of how that one shift, that revolution, completely changed the game for authors everywhere. This quote right here, it just gets right to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? The person speaking is looking at their grandfather's old manuscripts and just feels this wave of sadness. How many stories like that are just lost? Think about all the Grandpa Joes out there with these incredible tales to tell, but they were completely locked out of a system that was, let's be honest, almost impossible to get into. And that wasn't just a loss for them. It was a loss for all of us readers, too. So what was the system really like? Well, for generations, traditional publishing was all about the gatekeepers. You had a very small number of powerful publishers and literary agents, mostly in a few big cities, who got to decide which stories were worthy. And which ones? Well, they'd just be buried under a mountain of rejection letters. It was a totally closed loop, and if you weren't on the inside, you were just out. Our source material actually has this brilliant metaphor for the old system, a fictional company they call Swamp. Now, the name supposedly stands for serving the world in all marketplaces, but really it represents this massive, stifling force that basically controlled everything. They manipulated the markets and crushed independent creativity. The bottom line was, if you weren't part of Swamp's club, your odds of getting published were practically zero. And wow, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? Look at the difference. On the left, you've got the old gauntlet, gatekeepers, rejections, manipulation. It sounds exhausting. But then on the right, you see the promise of the new way, all thanks to technology. It's a complete 180, a total power shift from the huge corporation to the individual creator. So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? Well, it all started with a rebellion. Not, a rebellion with protests in the streets, but one that happened with keystrokes in homes all over the world. A whole new generation of authors got so frustrated with the old system that they just decided, hey, if they won't let us through the gates, we'll just build our own city. And that, right there, was the start of the indie uprising. And this slide, this shows you the secret weapon of that uprising, print on demand, or POD. See, before this, an author had to print thousands of copies of their book up front. That's a massive financial gamble. But POD changed everything. A book wasn't printed until a reader actually clicked buy. And just like that, the single biggest hurdle, the money, was gone. Anybody with a finished manuscript could now sell a real physical book. It was a total game changer. Of course, the old guard did not just sit back and watch this happen. The source material paints this incredible picture of traditional publishers literally out on the street, protesting at conference for young indie authors. They were furious because they saw this new movement as a threat to their entire world. But the new generation, they saw it very, very differently. This quote from a fictional 12-year-old indie author in the story just nails that generational divide. For kids like him, this wasn't about destroying publishing. It was about opening it up, democratizing it for everyone, for good. It was all about pure, unadulterated creative freedom. Okay, so the financial barrier is down. What's next? Well, you need tools, right? An entire ecosystem of platforms and services just popped up, allowing a single person to do what used to take an entire publishing house to accomplish. And they could do it all from their own computer. And this gave birth to a whole new kind of creator, the indiepreneur. This is such a key idea because an indie author today isn't just a writer anymore. Nope. They're the CEO. They're in charge of their own cover design, their marketing, their distribution, their finances, the whole shebang. They're true entrepreneurs building a business from the ground up, all centered around their art. Now, to show just how ridiculously streamlined this new world could be, the source imagines this tool called the Instant $1 Million Book Deal Generator. Okay, so it's fictional, but it's the perfect metaphor for how real-world platforms have automated everything. You just upload your work, and boom, algorithms connect you directly with opportunities. The whole old-school system of query letters and agents completely bypassed. So with all this power, all these new tools at their fingertips, the very idea of what it meant to be a successful author started to change. The goal wasn't just to land a book deal anymore. The new goal was, it was a whole lot bigger. For the first time, authors had the tools to build a direct connection with their readers, to create a global brand, and to become, like this quote says, Rock stars. They could actually achieve massive fame and fortune entirely on their own terms, all while keeping total creative control and, you guessed it, a much bigger slice of the profits. And don't think for a second this was just happening in one country. No way. This revolution went truly global. I mean, just look at this list. You have authors in classic literary hubs like London and Paris jumping on board, right alongside creators in cool new spots from Portland to Melbourne. A decentralized, worldwide community of writers was being built, all linked together by the same digital tools. So, what does this all add up to? When you step back and put all the pieces together, the low barrier to entry, the powerful tools, the direct line to a global audience, a lot of people started to see this as something truly historic, maybe even a new golden age for writers. This fictional review from the story just captures the massive scale of this change perfectly. Calling it a renaissance might sound a little dramatic, but honestly, it fits. It really reflects that explosive burst of creativity and opportunity that was unleashed when those old fortress walls finally crumbled. For the first time in history, anyone with a story to tell had a real shot at sharing it with the world. And that leads us to one last really big question. With literally millions of new books flooding the market every single year, how does any single voice get heard? When anyone and everyone can publish, does quality just get lost in all the noise? This revolution gave authors an incredible, unprecedented amount of freedom, but it also created a whole new set of challenges. And that's something worth thinking about.